Hello and welcome to another episode of the DigiTeacher Digest. This week I'd like to talk about what games, in particular video games, can teach us. It's based on a reading of a book which was about turn of the millennium by James Paul G called What Video Games Have to Teach Us About Learning and Literacy. And in this book he set out 36 principles of video games that were employed in video games which can teach us a lot about teaching and learning. There isn't enough time to cover all 36 principles, but just to give a sense of some of the principles. The first principle is that all learning in video games is active rather than passive. So you don't get told things, you don't get taught things explicitly. What happens is that you learn by doing. It is active rather than passive. So when you start playing a video game, you don't learn from the manual. What happens is you have a series of tutorials that kind of ease you into the game. So you'll learn how to move, how to harvest resources, what those resources do, any combat that you need to do. And it kind of eases you into the game and you learn it by doing it. And after about 5 minutes, you kind of feel confident to actually start playing the game. Wouldn't it be nice if all learning were like that, rather than sitting in passive rows being told things? There's an absolutely fabulous TED talk by McGonigle in which she talks about how video games will save the world, and she distills out 4 superpowers that games have, which if they were applied to real world situations would be absolutely fantastic. So the first superpower is a sense of urgent optimism. No one enters a game set up for failure, believing that they are going to fail. Everybody thinks they can play a game. You enter the game with a sense of optimism that you will be successful. Schools tend to divide people into those who are successful at it and those who are less successful, and it divides society. People set up to go on to the good schools, good universities, to get on with life, and those who are then consigned to be hewers of wood and carriers of water. In games, it's not that way. Everybody is expected to have a chance of success and to get somewhere. The second superpower is a sense of blissful productivity. No one enters a game and then twiddles their thumbs and do nothing. You get on with whatever needs doing, even if it's just cutting wood for an hour so that you have enough resources so that you can get the item that you need for the mission. And you will quite happily spend hours and hours doing quite menial and routine tasks, because it will ultimately lead to the success of the game. The third superpower is a sense of social fabric. People collaborate and help each other out in a way which doesn't really happen in real life, sadly. Newbies are valuable members of a team. You don't have to be, all level 30 master players. A newbie can contribute to the success of the team and is helped out, shown the ropes, even shown the cheats if need be. Social fabric is important in gaming, and wouldn't it be nice if that were the case in real life as well? And lastly, the fourth superpower, a sense of epic meaning. Games quite literally are about saving the universe, for example. And everybody knows why they're important. Not everybody knows why they're studying maths or why you have to do accounting or whatever it is. If only we had that sense that education really made sense and really fed into real life tasks. Since reading James Paul G's book and watching that TED talk by Jane McGonigle, I've thought quite a lot about how to apply these principles and superpowers into our classroom. And I can't pretend to have answers to this, but I think it's something that we as teachers need to continually think about and continually try to do. So, for example, one thing that I do in my classroom is I allow students to resubmit assignments. Just as when you die in a game, you're allowed to come alive again and try again and keep trying until you get it right. I don't believe it's right to give students one chance, one crack at it, and then to assess them forevermore. They should be judged by their best attempt rather than their worst attempt or first attempt. So resubmission, I think, is quite an important principle. Obviously, there are time constraints to this. If students were to be endlessly resubmitting, then they're not able to get on with doing assignments constantly. But I think it's important to offer that opportunity to students, and there are some who will work much harder to get everything perfect. There will be others who, they'll get their 80% or whatever it is and be happy with that. But some students will try for perfection, and they will keep submitting again and again until they get that 100%. I think it works very well for computer skills, which is what I teach mainly these days, because you want to know how to get something right in an application. If you're doing a spreadsheet, for example, you're not really after the mark. What you're interested in is being able to apply the formulae in a spreadsheet so that the spreadsheet works, that it fulfills the brief. I think another very important superpower that we really ought to be infusing into our classroom is that sense of epic meaning. Very often when you're learning, mathematics, for example, to understand maths, there are little subsections, ideas, concepts and things that you need to be able to grasp to grasp the overall mathematics. But those things can often seem very divorced from reality and from the real world. And you need constantly in your classroom to reinforce the idea that what you are doing there is something that is vitally important. So in my computing classes, for example, I try to take the coding that they're doing and ensure that it's being put to a purpose. So they're trying to solve problems, real world problems, climate change, health problems, for example, and find solutions to that using the coding. So that, yes, you are learning principles such as nested conditionals or whatever it is, but you're learning that so that you can solve a problem which is vital in the real world. And I think that's very, very important to keep at the forefront of what you do in the classroom. When it comes to social fabric, I think one of the things you can do is to use jigsaw exercises. So instead of teaching everybody exactly the same thing, what you can do is break a class into, say, 4 groups, and each group learns a different skill set. And then you take members from each of those 4 groups and combine them in separate groups, so that within each of those groups you have people with different skill sets. And this forces them to collaborate on working together to perform a task. I think it gives a sense also to a class that there are different paths, different choices they can make. And if you differentiate your curriculum in that way as well, so that, for example, if you're teaching spreadsheets, you can have, there are multiple tasks that students can do which include the same formulae or functions. And you can allow students to navigate through all of those tasks and do different ones. Giving them an element of choice, which I think adds to a sense that they are choosing their own path, which they are, but they aren't, because they end up learning the same skills in the end. And when you're using a jigsaw exercise, all the students end up learning all the skill sets, but they're learning some of them from each other, which I think is very helpful in terms of building that sense of social fabric in the classroom. I think that the sense of blissful productivity that one would really like to have in one's classroom is something that comes along if you have a sense of epic meaning, if students have a clear sense that what they're doing is valuable and will benefit the world and obviously themselves as well. And if they have a sense that they have an element of choice, that they are choosing to do particular tasks, I think then they're far more invested in doing it. Now, having said that, a lot of school remains humdrum no matter what spin you put on it. There's lessons on Monday morning and there's lessons on Friday afternoon, and very often we're not at our best. But I think if your classroom has an overall sense that students are valued, and they're valued because they are contributing, and they're contributing to a greater purpose, a sense of going somewhere, a sense of achieving something in the world, then I think all the rest tends to follow. And it's something that sometimes I get right, and sometimes it just doesn't materialize. For whatever reason, it just misfires. It's something I think that as a teacher one needs to constantly work at trying to achieve. I'll put the link to the Jane McGonigle TED Talk in the comments below, and I would urge you to watch it because it is truly inspirational. If you enjoyed content on this channel, please like, subscribe, share, hit the bell, and come back next time for more.